Now, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has pledged America's support for Africa's agriculture initiatives towards self-sufficiency in rice production. The U.S. envoy was speaking at the Africa Rice Center in Abidjan on Tuesday, where he was hosted by Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the head of the African Development Bank, and the Director General of the African Rice Center, Dr. Abubakar Mani. Let's listen.
First and foremost, I want to say I applaud what President Biden is doing with regard to global food security. And this is important because we are in a period in which climate change is decimating many parts of the world, in particular in the case of Africa, where the need then to have climate-adapted crops becomes a big issue about how you adapt to climate change. And secondly is what the U.S. government is doing with the Feed the Future initiative, which is an initiative to work with the rest of the world to be able to attain food security. And the Global Food Security Act of the U.S. government is the engine that draws that. And so I'm delighted that the partnership we have with the United States government is helping us in moving forward on food security in Africa. First and foremost is the technologies for African agricultural transformation, which Mr. Secretary mentioned, but also mentioned by the Director General. This is a very novel approach that brings together the global research and development community, of which Africa Rice is a member, together with the national agricultural research centers, the private sector, making sure we can get climate-resilient agricultural technologies, not to hundreds of farmers, not to thousands of farmers, but to millions of farmers. So only millions matter. And the Technology for African Agricultural Transformation, TAT, we started it about just 5 years ago, and already it has impacted, provided climate-resilient agricultural technologies for 25 million households, and that's impacted about 250 million people. And so what we are seeing today here is part of that. The work of Africa Rice here on this is very, very important, because with climate change now, the ability now to produce climate-resilient crops that you see today is very, very important to being able to sustain food production. I am very proud of Africa Rice. I used to be chief economist of Africa Rice in 1990 to 1995, so I'm back at home, and I want to really commend all the work that you are doing. The Rice TAT program, which is what we are supporting, already has impacted on roughly 3.8 million farmers, getting all the technologies that you see all here to farmers at scale. And we've received significant support from the U.S. government for that. I'm delighted that today the U.S. government provided us an additional $9.5 million to support the TAT program to be able to impact roughly 12 million farmers in about 40 countries. So, of course, that will help significantly with this. The other part of this is a program that we are working on. Secretary Blinken mentioned the issue of the United States Department's, U.S. State Department's on vision for adapted crops and soils, VISA, which we applaud because you need to make sure that we have the biodiversity, the crops that can adapt to climate change, and we can get those to scale. So in partnership with the U.S. government and other partners, and with Africa Rice, we are launching a program called Reward, which is a program that will now help Africa on rice to take all these technologies to scales of more millions of farmers. That initiative will be supported from the African Development Bank in 15 countries of West Africa with $600 million US. So, DG, you're going to be very busy with all of your staff, taking all your work to states, to 15 countries, to assure self-sufficiency and beyond, as Secretary said, expanding the potential of agriculture. And this reward program will also support roughly the cultivation of rice, which DG mentioned, on about 750,000 hectares of irrigated land. And we can imagine if we can get 7 tons per hectare and double cropping that he has said, what that impact will be. And we are targeting 1 million farmers.
On behalf of the 28 member countries of the Africa Rice Center, I welcome you to the headquarters of the Africa Rice Center in Cote d'Ivoire. So we are very grateful really for the decades-long support to rice research and development on the African continent that the bank and also the partnership with the United States of America have given to Africa Rice and their partners, as evidenced by the Afdb's program, which was called the Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation. The Rice Compact of that program, since 2018 it was started, already we find it has had a very big impact in the project countries. 25% by the yields have been improved, but at the same time also the most important component is the livelihoods of the households have been improved by more than 32%. And then already we have the total production in those countries by more than 1 million tons. But however, despite this big success through the first phase of that, we find the continent is still at 57% rice self-sufficiency, which means it's very important to support those initiatives such as the Afdb's new program, which is called the Reward Program, which actually targets more than doubling the rice yield from 2.5 tons to 7 tons per hectare in the project countries, and then at the same time increasing production by more than 53 million tons of paddy, and which we expect will lead to rice self-sufficiency in 15 African countries. So with that, really, I thank the Afdb President, Mr. Anderson, for his foresight, but also for the very strong and continuous support the Rice Program for Africa Rice and also the CJ Center. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Just to see the extraordinary work that's being done to get to a place where, as President Biden has said, Africa feeds itself. And actually, more than itself, a place where Africa feeds the world. And that is not only very possible, I'm convinced that it can happen. And it starts with a lot of the extraordinary work that the African Development Bank is doing in making the necessary investments in sustainable production and doing it in a smart, effective way. And then the work that AfriRice has been doing for so much time to maximize the crops and to do things that are, as we know from recent years, vitally important, producing resilient crops that can stand up to climate change and other weather-related events, that focuses well on nutrition, as we've just heard going through the different stands here. And then a virtuous cycle where not only are you doing the necessary in terms of production, but you also have the infrastructure necessary not only to produce, but also to distribute. And these are some of the things that we're working on, including with the investments we're making in the Libido corridor. And we talked about all of that today. I just want to add, from our perspective, that there is so much extraordinary innovation that is not only possible, but is happening, that can make a huge difference. And what has really struck with me is that a couple of years ago, as we faced an almost perfect storm of crises that were having a huge effect on food security around the world, the combination of climate change, of COVID, and then conflict, including Russia's aggression against Ukraine, we were seeing the devastating impact that was having. And of course, when you've got that kind of crisis, you want to jump in and do everything you possibly can on an emergency basis to help people. And that's exactly what the United States did, providing billions of dollars in additional assistance to countries in need. We're by far the #1 donor to the World Food Program. We are honored as well to be one of the closest partners to the African Development Bank.